ultimately, as builders, the biggest issue that we face is water. Water is our enemy. Water is the enemy of durability. And in America, and I suspect in Australia the same is true, 80% of construction defect litigation boils down to some type of water issue.
G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of the Build Insite Podcast. Today is a different one. We've actually got an international guest on here today, so we're in the virtual studio. My name is Luke. I'm joined by my co-host Dean. We have got Matt Risinger all the way from Austin, Texas, master builder and founder of the Build Show Network, a media platform educating builders, homeowners on better building science. Matt's also known for championing high-performance homes, smart product integration and simplifying building science behind quality construction. Today's episode, we're going to dive deep into Matt's origin story as well as some of the lessons he's learned and how the insights can benefit Australian builders. Matt, an absolutely huge welcome to the Australian viewers here. Welcome to the Build Insite Podcast.
Luke, Dean, really appreciate you guys having me. Very kind to have a guy from halfway around the world be a guest on the podcast. I'm very privileged.
No, privilege is ours, Matt. You're a big inspiration, whether you know it or not, mate, to a lot of people down in Australia, and been watching from afar for a long time, and that's
awesome.
Two Aussie blokes started out, thought we want to jump into a bit of get the education out in Australia and some conversations, mate. A lot of inspiration from what your team are doing with the Build Show, and a lot of great people doing good things in America. So, mate, we'd love to dive in and kind of learn a little bit more about your origin story. You've been in the building game yourself for a long time with your own company. What was the, I suppose your journey to the point where you found building science, better building and getting your education out to people?
Oh gosh, how long or short do you want me to go? I could give you the 5-minute or the 15-minute version.
You got the floor, mate.
Well, you're the one that just told us you get a concrete pour in the morning. So we're at midday here. Those that don't know the time difference, it's midday over here in Australia as we're recording this. It's actually 9 p.m. for Matt, and he's just told us he's got a concrete pour in the morning. So I'll leave it up to you, mate. We don't have to get to bed in much of a hurry.
Sounds good. You've got 9 hours to bed. I've got 1 hour to bed. Well, the fast story is when I was growing up in the 80s, I was a big fan of this show in America called This Old House. Do you guys get that in Australia, or did you ever watch that?
No.
It's it was a show on this channel called PBS, and it had this builder Tom Silva and a guy named Norm Abrams that you might know, a real famous woodworker. And it really just kind of followed these guys along with some tradesmen and women that were kind of regularly on the show as they remodeled houses through New England. And growing up, that was the only builder I knew. My dad was in the steel industry. I didn't know any builders. I didn't grow up in the trades. But I did a lot of hands-on construction starting in about junior high, really through my church, working on houses in inner city Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I grew up. And so I had this, even at a young age, I had this feeling of wow, I really like getting dirty. I like working with my hands. I really see that a good day's work equals something that feels tangible to me and lasting. But again, I didn't know any builders. I didn't know that there was a career in construction. So I went to school for engineering. I thought I was going to be an engineer, and quickly found out that differential equations was not my friend. So I dropped out of the engineering program my sophomore year and switched over to industrial management. And at the time, I really wanted to work for Toyota. I really felt like building cars was something I wanted to do for a living. So fast forward a couple years, when I graduated from school, I had a hard time trying to figure out how to get a job at an auto manufacturer. This was before the internet. I'm that old. And so a national builder, a big production builder, volume builder, came to my college where I was at school and was interviewing for assistant superintendent jobs. And I didn't know what that was. But I went and talked to them the night before the interviews and realized, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing. I can't believe I didn't sign up for an interview for this company. And so I pulled the people aside that night after the kind of night before conversations that my buddy said I should go to, and said, hey, you got to interview me. This sounds amazing. I would love this job. I was built for this. after they kind of explained what it was all about. So I got a job with a big national builder, worked for them for a long time, building not very great houses. I suspect Australia has some of those as well. I've actually been to a couple of those job sites when I was there. There may or may not be a YouTube video coming out on that in July. Hopefully I don't.
Stay tuned.
Hopefully I don't make any Australian builders mad. We'll see. I might.
No, we hope you do, mate. We hope you do.
Okay, perfect. I'm glad to hear. I mean, America's the same, right? We've got really good builders, but we also have builders that are they just don't get it. So worked for those guys for a while. I moved to a really rainy climate, Portland, Oregon, after working for that production builder. And this is when the kind of the crap hit the fan for the building industry in America. We had built a bunch of houses with this fake stucco called ephes. I don't know if you've ever heard of that term before. We had a siding from a national manufacturer that had a huge recall because of moisture problems. And then we had this issue with mold in America where insurance companies were covering mold claims in 2002. And so here I was, this young builder. I was in my early 30s. And the builder I was working for at the time, at that point, I was like head superintendent, I guess was my title, head superintendent, let's call it. Anyways, we had gotten sued by a bunch of people right after I started for them. And so my boss said, hey, I know we hired you to be the head superintendent, but now you're in charge of warranty and making these lawsuits go away. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, okay, boss, like, sure. But for me, it felt like the world was falling apart. Like, I didn't know what was wrong with these houses. Like, why were we getting sued? And what was the problem? And it was the first time I really started digging into building science. And I didn't know the term building science. I just knew that we had failures and lawsuits. And there was a lot of moisture problems. And so here I was, this young builder, like trying to figure out, how do we get out of these lawsuits? How do we not build more houses that get sued by those people? And it was a really valuable time in my career. I was really thankful I was working for somebody else and not myself at the time, because he was getting sued and I was just getting paid to help with the lawsuits. But as you guys know, what it boiled down to was we were just building houses that were rather laissez-faire about waterproofing. We were just installing windows like we always had. We weren't paying a lot of attention to our waterproofing details, to the products we were using. We also got really wet during construction and then had some vapor barrier issues where we were putting plastic on the insides of the houses as a vapor barrier that code was calling for at the time. And we weren't letting the houses dry properly before closing them in. And then we were using a lot of house wraps on the outside with low perm ratings. And so in the end, it was like getting a wet 2x4 and putting it in a Ziploc bag. And we all know what happens to wood if it's not able to dry, right? One of my favorite sayings I've said a million times is, if it can't dry, it's going to die. This famous guy, David Nicastro, said that. And the example I like to use when I give building science talks is, how long will your dining room table last in your dining room? I mean, in theory, forever, right? We could buy a Ming Dynasty Chinese dining room table that has been kept dry and inside for 1,000 years. That wood's fine. On the other hand, if you put that same table outside, and even if you pressure treat it and turn it into a picnic table, how long will that wood table last? Well, maybe a decade or two. What if you don't pressure treat it? What if it sits in a puddle or you bury the posts in the mud and they're unpressure treated? How long will it last? Well, not very long, because it can't dry very well. So as this young builder, I was realizing, oh my gosh, like I need to really pay attention to this. And I need to really dig in and learn how do I not have problems? And I feel like in some respects, here we are 20 years later, and we still have a long ways to go for a lot of builders and for the general building world in America. And frankly, for Australia too. Like, people are still doing things like they've always done it without paying a lot of attention. And like, I go to Australia and I see a bunch of steel framing, and I'm like, oh, is someone paying attention? Steel has condensation issues. I mean, I'm drinking a soda, not a beer here at night, but if my soda is out here in the in my house, have you ever seen condensation form on a soda can? Well, it's because there's a transfer of energy through that metal, and I've got a dew point on the metal can. Well, our metal framing could have the same problem if we have an air leak and we have some humid air leaking through the building, and we can easily find a cold condensing surface on that metal framing. So it's not like you can't use metal framing, but we have to be really cautious about it and use it in a smart way and make sure we don't have those problems. So fast forward a year or two, I moved to Texas in 2005, which is my wife's hometown or home state. I moved to Austin, which is the capital. And I'd always wanted to start my own home building company. And so 2005 was a good economy to do it in. And so we're 20 years old this year. And I'd like to say that I've never had any problems or never had any issues, but that would be a bold-faced lie. I've only had one real lawsuit, and that was really eye-opening. Unfortunately, I can't tell you too much about it because I signed a bunch of non-disclosure things with clients. But I can tell you that I learned a lot about problems. And I also made some of the dumb mistakes that I had when I was in Portland, too. And I think I've talked about those in some of my building science presentations because ultimately, as builders, the biggest issue that we face is water. Water is our enemy. Water is the enemy of durability. And in America, and I suspect in Australia the same is true, 80% of construction defect litigation boils down to some type of water issue. So that's kind of the fast story, Luke and Dean, or the 5 version, I should say.
Dino, so I rocked up to site last week, got scratched bench tops, paint all over the windows.
Let me guess, Lukey. No goop?
No goop. And now we're spending big bucks trying to fix it.
Mate, Goop Guys roll on a thick, peelable protective coating that saves your surfaces.
And your budget.
And your sanity, Lukey.
Seriously, check them out. goopguys.com.au. Protect your job from the start. No, that's good. That's good. At what point, Matt, just go back sort of halfway point there before you started on your own, at what point did you get with the other builder through all of those claims? Did you you had enough of it at that point, or you settled a few and then decided, right, now it's my turn to build better on my own?
A little bit of both. During that I worked for that company for 3 years, and it actually worked out pretty well because I was going to move after we got pregnant. So I moved from Oregon, which is in the northwestern part of the States, down to Texas. So that company was just building in Portland. So it was an easy break for me to say, guys, I'm really, I've enjoyed working here, but I'm gonna be quitting my job and moving. But I'd gotten them through all those lawsuits, and we'd changed quite a bit. So I had gone at least 18 months without any problems from the lawsuit, and we really transformed how we build houses. And to that builder and that owner's credit, he really listened to me and allowed us to make a lot of changes and realized, if we build a better house, that'll be a house that will be less prone to potential lawsuits and problems.
Yeah, Matt, what you're so on the money with what you're saying there. So Australians at the moment, we're going through a bit of a phase where building science, passive house, high performance building and so forth is gaining, I say traction, but more interest, and builders are, almost the new generation of builders are taking up, realizing we need to build better than the normal here. But there's kind of that head in the sand, dipping the toe in, or you're fully in the rabbit hole. And I think that's where we're at. It sounds like it's still a bit of that in America as well. And I guess, from your side of things, if that's the story where it's at, was there much in America at the time you improved to, get further education, or was it a matter of you diving in and just finding better practices yourself within your own business?
I would say there's always been kind of a subset of builders and educators in America, at least in the 20 years that I've really been thinking about it and diving into it. I guess maybe 23 years now. But I do see a lot of those educators getting older and retiring. One of the guys that I've learned the most from is a guy named Joe Stiebrick. It looks like Lustiebrick, and he's a Canadian. I think it's a Polish name, but Joe's kind of the godfather of building science in America. He publishes articles to buildingscience.com is his website. And he's written a ton of books on better building practices. And I've probably learned more from Joe than any other, building science guy. Joe's unfortunately in his late 60s or so. He might be 70 already. And I suspect he's going to retire, but there is another generation of some folks at his organization that are going to take the mantle and take the torch. But that was a big part of why I started making YouTube videos, frankly. I moved to Texas in 2005. And in America, for a long time, the building publications were all kind of centered around New England, kind of the north and eastern part of the United States. And that's a pretty cold climate. Very, very different than Texas. Texas tends to be very hot and humid. I suspect like your northern state or your northern cities in Australia, closer to the equator. And so when I started building houses in Texas, I felt like, I really need to figure this out. Like, this is a very different climate zone than where I worked before. And I suspected that if I built the exact same house that I were to build in Vermont or Maine or Boston, that I could have some problems in Texas because it just feels very different. And so I really started digging into that. And within a short while, I was like, yeah, I need to pay attention to this. And for instance, our building codes at that time were pretty backwards. Like, we were requiring vapor barriers on the inside in Texas, which is really dumb. That's really not a good idea. Your vapor barrier needs to be on the warm side of the wall. The problem is the warm side of the wall changes too, though, right? Depending on the climate and the season. And in Texas, the warm side of the wall, 10 out of the 12 months of the year is the outside wall. And so to require a vapor barrier on the inside is really dumb. And typically will lead to mold problems within a couple of years because you'll have condensation.
Matt, just quickly on that, do you have, obviously America is huge. Do you have one sort of, like we call it the National Construction Code? Do you have one code that covers the whole country, or do you have different sections that are broken up?
We do, but we have some different requirements based on climate zone, Luke.
Yep.
So we have 7 or is it 8? I guess we have 8 climate zones in America. And so it'll change your insulation levels, and the perm ratings now have finally caught up to say, hey, you in these different climate zones, here's the perm rating of the interior and the exterior vapor barriers. So we finally caught up a little bit on that, but we've come a long ways. We needed some help on that.
Yeah, we're about the same, Matt. We got the one construction code, but we would have more a code home. So you've visited Queensland and New South Wales recently, so they're more of a warmer spot, a bit more humidity as you go up, but you can come down to Melbourne, Victoria, where you get a colder climate, and people will be building the same thickness frames, same R27 insulations in your walls, and it's not climate related, which, yeah, it's quite crazy to think. And unless you're actively doing better yourself, then no one's kind of still forcing that.
I mean, that's why I think builders need to be educated, Dean, right? We need to know, regardless of what code requires, I need to know what it takes for me to build a really good house in my climate. And passive house is a good standard, but it tends to be a little, and I don't mean this in a derogatory sense, it tends to be a little German, right? Like, it was a standard that was made for Germany, and I'm not building in Germany, so, like, yes, they've modified it over the years, and it's not the same as it once was, but I'm not necessarily interested 100% in the energy use of my house. And that code and that standard really feels like that's all it cares about in my mind. So as a result of that, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but I've been working on my own standard. I have a Build HD standard that I'm hoping to unveil this fall. We've gotten pretty far on it. Not for Australia yet, but maybe you guys could learn something from it. But the idea being, like, what does it take to build a really good house? There are some other standards out there. There's a book that was written by a group of architects and builders called The Pretty Good House. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that book before.
Yep. I haven't got that here, but I've got that at home on my desk at home.
Terrific book. Very well written. I really like those guys. I don't love the name. Like, none of my clients are going to be excited about a pretty good house. Like, what? Like a pretty good house? Yeah, it's all right. It's pretty good. I don't know. It's not bad.
It's not
great, but it's pretty good. I'm like, really, guys?
Wasn't written by an Aussie.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So anyways, my thought was, what if I had a standard that was like, this is a really heavy duty standard. Like, I don't want the junkiest pickup truck. Like, I want a heavy duty truck. Like, I want a truck that if I need to haul a trailer, I can haul a trailer. If I'm going to go on a long drive, I need a diesel so that I get better mileage. Like, I'm going to put the engine in that's going to last longer than the standard gas engine. I'm going to put the transmission in that's going to go for a couple 100,000 miles rather than one that's going to break at 100,000 miles. I mean, that's my thought, was like, hey, let's get a standard that's like a really good standard. And it goes beyond just energy use. Like, energy use is good and all, but to be honest, some of the American legislature over the years, I feel like, has done a disservice to reliability. And this is a little bit of a rant that I'll if you'll permit me just for 30 seconds. But like, we have this thing called Energy Star in America, which was the standard for how efficient your appliances are. And in theory, I really like that. Like, of course I want to buy the more efficient one. But what it doesn't account for is that sometimes that efficiency boost decreases reliability. It's kind of like what's happened with some of the gas standards in America, and I suspect maybe for you guys too. Like, would you rather have a Toyota Land Cruiser built in 1990 that doesn't have electronics and would drive for 1 million miles, or the new Land Cruiser that has 47 computers and, if one sensor goes bad, your whole truck needs to go back to the Toyota dealership? I mean, I feel like we've kind of messed some things up a little bit when it comes to reliability. And like, as a side note, in America, 1950s refrigerators had really, really bomber compressors that would last forever, and people would take them out of their kitchen and make them their beer fridge in their garage. Well, they were energy hogs, which is not good, right? But on the other hand, they lasted forever. And nowadays, if you buy let's say a $2,000 refrigerator, what's the chances it's going to last 5 years before it breaks and ends up in a landfill? So what's better, to have 5 landfilled refrigerators that use less energy, or one refrigerator that you can repair and that maybe lasts for 40 or 50 years? I mean, in my mind, I'd rather have the durable one and pay another $5 a month on electricity.
You speak just common sense there, Matt, and that's a thing that's coming rare these days, mate.
Yeah, that was an awesome analogy.
For over 130 years, Bowen's has been the builder's choice, providing a service that provides timber, hardware and innovative building products.
And now we're helping you further with this wonderful partnership.
We're proud to announce Bowen's as our new premier sponsor, bringing you more of the insights that you love. Build Insight, together with Bowen's.
Real people,
Real insights.
That's what it feels like. Yeah, like, let's get back to a really common sense. Let's build something that's really going to last, that I'm going to get my value out of, that's going to be reliable. Maybe not a bunch of gee whiz connected everything iPhone apps to control my house, right? Maybe we don't need that. My standard probably won't get in. We're not going to get into a lot of that part. That's going to be up to you to decide if you want to do that. But as a side note, I would say, if you're going to do it, you better use Lutron, because everyone else is junk and is unreliable.
Oh, very good. So Matt, back to the origins of the Build Show then. So it sounds like you kind of started creating YouTube videos from your learnings to put your message out there, because the rest of the industry was just building crap.
I wish that was 100% true. To be honest, Luke, I did it really selfishly. I started my company in 2005, and in 2006, I heard this guy at a builder's symposium talk about marketing, and he basically said, traditional marketing is dead. You should market yourself via a blog, is what he said in 2006. And so I started writing a blog. Have I told you this story? Have you heard this story? I don't want to repeat myself if you've heard it.
I've heard it, but maybe the listeners haven't.
So quickly, I'll be fast on this. I started writing a blog, and really quickly, I realized when I go to a meeting with a prospect, somebody who wants to do a remodel with me, let's say, because that's pretty much all I was doing in 2006, they would go search out my name, Google my company, and they'd find my blog, and they were like, oh, Matt, hey, good to meet you. I read several of your blog posts last night. And, I feel like you're, they didn't say this out loud, but I feel like you're smart and you kind of know what you're talking about. So let's talk about my project, right? So I was like, well, this is good. I should keep doing this. So then about a year later, a friend of mine says, hey, have you heard about this website, YouTube? Why don't you take my flip video camera that has this port that flips out with a USB, and you plug it into your Dell laptop, and then you can upload it to to YouTube for free. It was before YouTube was even owned by Google. And I was like, oh, this is great. I don't have to write anymore. I could just do a video. And so I would do these videos with really the sole purpose for my prospects someday to see them. And I was always talking about something that I felt like was unusual for my climate zone, right? And it was kind of different to do and smart stuff that the national magazines and let's say national publications weren't talking about. So now I'd go to a meeting and they'd be like, oh my gosh, Matt, great to meet you. And I'd be like, well, how do you know me? Like, why are you acting so like you know me? Like you guys have seen my videos. You kind of have a sense for what I'm like, right? Because I'm the same dude in the video. So now I was like, well, this is great. And I didn't care how many views they got. I just felt like, oh, this is really good for my business. Like, this is free marketing. I'm talking about something that I enjoy, and I'm trying to build a better house every time anyways. So I'm just going to keep making videos on this topic. So I wish I could tell you, Luke, that I was trying to elevate the industry. But in reality, I was just trying to market my business. Let's be honest.
Well, that's good. That's an awesome takeaway, because there's a lot of young guys out there at the moment that I think are a little bit nervous to put themselves out there and sort of showcase what they're doing. So that's really good to hear firsthand from yourself, Matt, that's how it started. And it's educating your prospect before they even have that initial conversation with you.
The one quick thing I want to say on that, Luke, especially for the younger builders, is you got to throw your ego in the backseat. For years, I was making videos and getting 30, 40, 50, 100, maybe 100 views. If a video made 100 views, I'd be like, oh my gosh, honey, you won't believe this, but that video I made about insulation, 100 people have watched it. Can you believe it? You think about what a room full of 100 people looks like. You're like, wow, why would 100 people watch this? So, today my videos get a lot more than that, but I would tell you that they were just as valuable when they had 100 views. And so, throw out your ego. It doesn't matter. I mean, the same is true with your podcast. I guarantee you that your prospects, Luke and Dean, have listened to your podcast. They may not be like regular listeners where they listen to every word you say, but the fact that you put yourself out there, that you're willing to educate and elevate your industry and take a leadership position, I guarantee your clients are like, oh yeah, my builder is awesome. He does this podcast on a regular basis and has all these guests, and they talk about construction and, what kind of construction? I don't know, but he's really smart. You should look at his podcast sometime. That's the kind of stuff that people are like, most people won't and don't do it. So if you do it, you're automatically in the top 1%.
No, well said, mate. Matt, I've got speaking of content, we in Australia are a little bit more limited to, I suppose, what we have access to with building materials and technology systems. There's one in particular I have been watching from afar for a long time, and that's the Zip system.
All of us.
All of us.
Oh.
And, we have got some contacts and industry people that are, would like to kind of get their hands on that. So that's probably a conversation for another day. But yeah, is there some of the favorites that you like working with, mate? And you really get excited about making that content and getting your hands on new things all the time?
For sure. I do, yeah. On a side note, by the way, there's a company called Dry Shell that's going to make a Zip system for Australia. So keep that in the back of your mind. Dry Shell is coming to your land. It may be there already. I think it's all one word.
Just before we do move on, obviously we know what it is. We watch your stuff, and I'm sure there's a lot of listeners that do know what it is. For those that don't, what is the Zip system, Matt?
It's a wood-based sheathing product. So typically half-inch nominal 7/16 product. Zip in particular is an OSB-based product, but it has an integrated water and air barrier on the outside of the panel so that when you nail it on like standard sheathing, which you guys don't use a lot of solid sheathing always, it doesn't sound like in Australia, but let's say if you were going to solid sheathe the outside of your house with plywood, now you wouldn't have to put a house wrap on. What you do instead is you tape the seams, and now you have a waterproof, but more importantly, also an airproof exterior to your house.
Is it just like the OSB board, like the Origin strand board, or does it have a foam inner as well? No?
Well, there are two versions. They make a Zip R that has a foam attached to it as well, Luke. So Zip R has anywhere from a 1/2 inch all the way up to 2 inches of foam attached to the Zip System sheathing. So if you were going to frame a house in Australia out of steel studs, let's say, Zip R would be the perfect exterior for that, because now you'd have a nice thermal break on the outside of those steel studs, and you'd have a really good water and air barrier on the outside of the house, so you can make sure you don't get air leaking into those cavities.
And I mean, that's probably been a great successful product. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, you guys sheathe all your walls and roof, like the whole building there. I think you guys get a higher cyclonic area and tornado cyclones. Whereas here, we quite often, there's some bracing to external walls. Truss and roof systems usually just have metal cross bracing. It's only if you're building more high performance using certain things like Pro Climber wraps where you're worried about ponding and pitches of roofs. But that's something that I know in the past Americans have come out and couldn't believe we're not sort of sheathing the whole structure, making it more solid.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I guess that's right. I guess I really don't know your seismic issues, or maybe lack of seismic issues, or wind, or snow loads, all that kind of stuff. So that certainly can be a difference between Australia and America. And America is so big, but Australia is 80% as big as America. So, I mean, you guys have a huge amount of land as well. All your population tends to be in all the cities, though, of course.
Yeah, mostly New Adelaide. It's sort of more the East Coast, but
mainly where Luke is. Yep, I can see that. Now it's going to grow to be the biggest city in Australia now that Luke's there.
It's getting popular, Matt. Yeah,
for sure.
We saw recently too. You met a good mate of ours, Dan, Airboss Dan from Pro Climber, while you're in Brisbane, learning some taping techniques.
Yes,
mate. He's a real favourite of ours.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Tips and tricks.
Very smart guy. Great educator.
Definitely.
We shot a couple of Instagram videos together, and I can't remember if I got him on my Build Show YouTube or not. I'm not sure. Hopefully, because Dan's really smart. I really liked him a lot. Good guy.
Yeah. Definitely. He's good German fellow.
All right, guys, that brings us to the end of part 1, episode 36 with Matt Reisinger. I hope you guys have enjoyed the episode. If you want to find out more about Build Insight, head over to our website, buildinsite.com.au. Over on the website, you can find links to previous podcast episodes as well as our Instagram and YouTube channels. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next week for part 2.
We just need to say a massive thank you to our sponsors and supporters. Without them, Build Insight wouldn't be possible. So to Bowens, Circus Studio, Wonderbuild, Goop Guys, Calorie Building, and Backman Builders, thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you again next week.
Let's cue the disclaimer. I need to let you know that myself and the Build Insight team are in no way, shape or form qualified to give you personal or specific business advice. We strongly encourage you seek out the use of professionals for products or when you are making personal or business decisions. Everything discussed during the Build Insight podcast is our own and the guest opinion and personal experience and is of a general nature only. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Catch you on the next one.